For the African-American community. Be specific. What did he say that in your assessment represented that kind of tough love?
Well, he talked about, right, and you guys can weigh in on this. He said that poverty should not become an excuse, and it had become an excuse for some not to try to make it, not to live the dream. And he talked about racial politics as well. And he said some of the goodwill and the folks in the black community, in the movement, who were working for good, and correct me if I'm wrong, had given over maybe to racial politics, and some in the black community had started to use excuses to not being able to make it. And that is not what Dr. King's dream was. Let me let Van weigh in on that.
Well, I mean, Dr. King always said that individuals have the responsibility to climb that ladder on their own effort and with their own energy and initiative. But Dr. King also said that you have to have a ladder to climb. And I think he had a good balance here of saying, yes, you must move forward. You can't make excuses. But he also talked about the importance of society putting the rungs on the ladder and helping people, giving people the opportunity to climb. And I think Dr. King has been misunderstood and sometimes been hijacked as saying all he wanted was for individuals to have an opportunity. That's true. But he also wanted to make sure that society came together to give those poor kids a chance. And I think Obama stood for that today.
Dr. King spoke of, in his last days on April 3rd, 1968, that he had been to the mountaintop, that he had seen the promised land. And what he was saying is that he saw that America was a land of opportunity. I think the president gave a little bit of tough love today, but I also think he understood the anguish of those who may have engaged in different activity. And what he said is, we all have to be able to help and educate children in crumbling schools. And as I said, raise the, bridge the divide of unequal wealth. And that's something that Congress and state legislators, and let me just say this, we must fix the Voting Rights Act, because Dr. King, in his efforts for accommodation, understood that the empowerment of the vote was a powerful tool as well.
Thank you for that. I see Jesse Jackson is waiting in the wings. He's raring to go.
Goodness.
I can only imagine what he's going to have to say about this.
Let me just salute Reverend Jesse Jackson as well as one of those implementators with Hosea Williams and James Orange and others.
And everyone in a minute.
Thank you.
Wolf, Gloria, and you guys there in Washington, thank you so much. We're going to get to a quick break. We'll come back here to Washington on the other side of the break. My colleague Brooke Baldwin in Atlanta will help me with the coverage. We'll be right back here on CNN.
Let freedom ring, those famous words uttered 50 years ago, and here you have the bell ringing just about 50 minutes ago. That bell right there is the very same bell that rang out in Birmingham, Alabama at the 16th Street Baptist Church back on September 15th, 1963, because that was the day the bomb ripped through the church, taking the lives of those 4 little girls. And bells rang out just like this one at some 300 churches nationwide this afternoon to pay tribute to the anniversary of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, and of course that famous line, "Let freedom ring." We've been watching the ceremony throughout this afternoon here on CNN on this historic day as we mark the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. I want to go back to Don Lemon, who's been steering that for us. And Don, just listening quickly to you and Van Jones talking earlier, I know it's been a nasty, rainy day for thousands of people who made the trek there. But to hear, according to you two, one woman saying, "I don't need an umbrella. I faced the fire hoses back in the day. I am fine." Puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It certainly does. And it's just a little rain. We're not going to melt from a little rain. And you know what? You wouldn't really know it was raining if you looked at the crowds that showed up. At first, you know, the people were concerned if it was going to put a damper on it. It did not. And I just want to pay tribute quickly to those 4 little girls that you mentioned: Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wellesley, Carol Robertson, and Denise McNair, those 4 little girls that died on September 15th, 1963, after the 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed, 1963. I also want to read something. I want to bring in now the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Van Jones is here with me. Tell me if you know this quote. It says, "But nothing in any country," this person is talking about, you know, turmoil across the world. And he says, "But nothing in any country touches us more profoundly, and nothing is more freighted with meaning or our own destiny than the revolution of the Negro American." That sounds a lot like what we heard here. What was that? Am I right?
Lyndon Baines Johnson. Today we heard great inspiration and analysis, frankly, from Presidents Carter, Clinton. President Obama took us to another level. But we get inspiration today from looking in the rearview mirror. Our challenge today is out the windshield. This deep unemployment will require appropriation, legislation, and civil rights enforcement. That is we're inspired now. But the 30 cities where 40% of blacks are unemployed, still unemployed. Yeah. And there's no plan to employ them. Whether 6 cities, 52% plus, they're still there. So the challenge to, in fact, end the state standard ground laws, revive the war on poverty, student loan debt forgiveness, these require investment. I hope our government will respond to the dream speech in that way.
I want to know, though, as you're here, what's going on in your heart 50 years later as you looked out on this mall, as you heard that speech, the first African-American president? You're an orator yourself. One of the best speeches I've ever heard was 1988. Are we lying? At the Democratic National Convention. I listen to that speech all the time when I need to sort. I am somebody.
Well, it really started here. One morning while we had tents out here, Resurrection City, and I've been asked to be the mayor by Reverend Abernathy. And that morning, you know, spirits were low. Dr. King had been killed. Robert Kennedy had been killed. And the people looking up to me to give them something. I got nothing to give them. No money, no food, no bus ticket back home. And I'd heard from Howard Thurman, when your back is against the wall, reduced to an irreducible essence, you got something left. You're somebodyness. I am.
And that
I matter. And that really came from here.
From here.
In 1968.
Yeah. Go ahead, Van.
I just want to say to you, sir, you know, when you talk about 40 years in the wilderness, you talk about Dr. King being killed in 68, Obama being sworn in 2008. Whenever you have a bridge that long, there has to be a central post. You were the central post. Nobody can take that away from you. 1984, 1988, your conception of the Rainbow Coalition is now the governing coalition of America. And had you not changed the rules in 1988 for Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton would have won the nomination. So I just want to give honor. I know you were here 50 years ago, but you were here 20 years ago as well, and I appreciate you. And the country needs to remember there would be no Barack Obama had there not been Reverend Jesse Jackson, 88.
Wow, well, look how much love you're getting.
I think President Obama for having the stuff to take that ball across the finish line. He has this intellectual capacity, strength of character and vision. But my concern now is that as he's respond to what happened 50 years ago and how great it was great. The windshield in front of us says in these urban areas is, you know, the impact of home foreclosures,
right?
The impact of plants closing, jobs leaving, drugs coming. So we now need the constitutional right to vote, revival of the war on poverty, and student loan debt forgiveness, something like that.
I hate to rush as Reverend Jesse Jackson.
No,
but
you don't.
I've got to get to break, but just a quick question. I would be remiss in my duties as a reporter. How is Jesse Jr. doing?
Well, he's recovering, my primary issue now is his health, and thanks be to God, he's getting healthy. This time a year ago, I thought we would have lost him. But now I'm convinced he's stronger, getting stronger, and keep praying because prayers do matter so much.
His wife and the family, everybody.
The wife, the children, and it's the family that's had to expand and include.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back here on CNN.
Let freedom ring. I have a dream. Let freedom ring.
We're back now live at the mall in Washington, and what a day it was. I want to bring in Donna Brazil here, my colleague, commentator, Democratic strategist, know-it-all. Oh. So as they say, as the old folks say, now that we're here, what do you think?
Where do we go from here? Well, we will continue to march for freedom and justice, but today I think all of us leave with heavy hearts, knowing that So many came before us to get us to this moment in history, and now it is our opportunity to keep the dream alive.
Yeah, and as Dr. King would say, let freedom ring.
Let it rain. Free at last.
All right. Thank you, Donna. I'm Don Lemon in Washington. I want to throw it now to my colleague, the lead, and John Berman.